All right. So last week we talked about the infield. This week we moved to the outfield. A group that I feel a little more confident in the infield in some ways, and in some ways I feel different. In some ways I feel different. Let's go over the names that the Mariners have on the 40-man roster that are listed as strictly outfield in alphabetical order. Dominic Canzone, Jonathan Clase, Mitch Haniger, Cade Marlowe, Dylan Moore, Julio Rodriguez, and Taylor Trammell. Let's go over some names that have some outfield experience that are on the 40-man roster as well. Sam Haggerty, Luke Raley, who they still list in the infield, and I think that's curious, and Samad Taylor. So you've got about 10 guys with outfield experience, a couple other guys who could play in the outfield in a pinch. I think Josh Rojas could be a fine corner outfielder. Jorge Polanco in an emergency, that would be fine. I wouldn't trust any of these other guys in the outfield. JP Crawford, I guess. Hopefully nothing comes to that where he has to move off shortstop, but those are your guys. So about a quarter of your roster is capable of playing in the outfield. So there's some depth here. There's some question marks. Let's start with the non-question mark. The one area I feel real confident. And that, of course, is Cade Marlowe. No, I'm just kidding. All due respect to Cade Marlowe. I'll say nice things about you in a little bit. So Julio Rodriguez, a weird 2023 season, which is a weird thing to say about a season that produced as much WAR as it did and produced as much accolades as it did. But if you take away that August, it's a good season. It's not a great season. It's a slightly above average season, I would say. Now, for a 22-year-old, it's a well above average season. For a player of Julio's talent, slightly average season. I have super high expectations for Julio Rodriguez. And you can't take that August away. It would be really mean if you did. And that August is the best offensive season I've seen from a Seattle Mariner. Or the best season. Heck, I've seen Seattle Mariners have much worse seasons than Julio Rodriguez in August. But it's the best month of anybody that I can remember. I'm sure Griffey and Edgar and A-Rod had numbers that produced similar stuff, but I'm old and I can't really remember them. What I saw Julio Rodriguez do in August is the most impressive thing I've seen a Seattle Mariner do. And we don't need Julio Rodriguez to be that good as Seattle Mariner fans, but we need him to play closer to that level than we did in a couple other months. Now, the good news is Julio Rodriguez is always going to be an extremely valuable player because his speed and his defense, and they go kind of hand in hand, but his ability to make plays in the diamond or in the grass, make throws to the diamond, and when he's on base to just wreak havoc. You can't overrate it. You can't overrate it. So I'm not calling the offense a added benefit because that's what they need. They need Julio Rodriguez to be a well above average hitter. Heck, you're probably talking on the 20/80 scale. You probably need him to be a 70 hitter. And he's more than capable of doing it. In order to reach it, he's going to have to chase less. But there's every tool here for him to be not one of the best players in baseball, the best baseball player in baseball. Best baseball player in baseball. The best player in baseball. He is that good. He is him. I have a lot of confidence in Julio Rodriguez, and they need him. They need him in order for them to be a World Series contender. I think Julio needs to be a 7 to 8 win player. And that's asking a lot of a 22-year-old. 23, excuse me. He's always going to be 22 in my mind. But they need him to be special. And the good news is there's every reason to believe he can be. All right, let's talk about some other outfielders here. Dominic Canzone. So Canzone's really impressed me this spring. A bunch of people telling me that he looks healthier, in better shape. You know, we get a lot of the best shape of his life stuff, and a lot of it we don't take super seriously, right? But that's big for him because, you know, he's not a great defensive player. and being in better shape should help with some of that. Now, instincts still matter, tracking the baseball, all that stuff still matters a lot. But the fact that he has looked better in the outfield on top of looking better with the bat, I'm a little more confident in him being the starting left fielder. I think it's interesting that he's the starting left fielder, at least in my eyes, and based on what I've heard from others. Because I thought that was going to be Luke Raley after this trade. But Luke Raley, and look, we overdo spring training stats a lot, right? We talk about him way too much. But the fact he's looked lost at the plate on top of the struggles he had in the second half of last year is concerning. And there are some real flaws to Luke Raley's game. There's some strengths too. He's got power. He's got speed. He is a better defensive player than Dominic Canzone, which, not saying a whole heck of a lot. But everything was here for him to get the job. And he's looked lost at the plate this spring. Now, again, spring training stats can only take him so far. Can't tell you how many people wrote off Shohei Ohtani based on his spring training his first year. And that's one of the stupidest things I've ever seen. But Luke Raley ain't Shohei Ohtani. He's a solid major league player, I think. The fact that Canzone has won this job so easily is a little bit concerning to me. And that's not an insult to Canzone. It's definitely not a compliment to Raley, though. Be very curious to see how much playing time he gets early on, because I think the Mariners acquired him with the hope that he was going to be like your sixth hitter and a guy playing in left field more often than not. Based on what I've seen this spring, I'm not sure that he's that guy. Jonathan Clase, the speed's super impressive. The defense is good. There is some power in that bat. The strikeouts are overwhelming. I think it's interesting that he's headed to AAA Tacoma instead of AA Arkansas, because it kind of sounds like he could be that next man up type of thing. But there's a lot to work on. He's a very intriguing prospect, but there is a lot of risk that comes with that reward. We'll see how he does in AAA. If the outfielders struggle and he hits well and he can keep the strikeouts to a lower roar, could be the next guy up. Good old Mitch Haniger. It's fun that I get to do videos about Mitch Haniger because, I started the channel not long after he signed with the Giants. And, it was very obvious that Mitch Haniger wasn't going to return to Seattle, right? I was pretty surprised that he made a return as soon as he did. I've been very encouraged by what we've seen in spring. And again, I'll point out spring training stats, yada, yada, yada. But it's nice to see he looks healthy, because a healthy Mitch Haniger has been a really good baseball player. It's worth pointing out that when Mitch Haniger was healthy last year, and who knows how truly healthy he was a pretty bad player in 2023. But he looks different in 2024. And I've gotten a lot of reports that say he looks better and very motivated. So if Mitch Haniger can be the 2022 version of Mitch Haniger, it improves this offense so much. So much. Cade Marlowe. I think Cade Marlowe should make this roster in part because of my concerns about what we talked about with left field, and what we've talked about now with Mitch Haniger is his defense is not good. Now, Mitch Haniger works his you-know-what off to become a competent defender. He used to be a really good athlete, and he could get away with some stuff, and he had a very strong throwing arm. It's not that guy anymore. I think you need either Marlowe or another guy we'll talk about in a sec on this roster as a defensive replacement, because I do believe Cade Marlowe is the second best defensive player among this group. So I think he belongs there. I wonder if Seattle would like to send him down to AAA to work on some stuff. I'm not sure they could afford it. And look, Cade Marlowe is going to be 27. So it's not like this is a 21, 22-year-old who's working some stuff out. This is a fairly developed prospect or fairly developed player. I think he might just be what he is. And what he is not good enough to be a regular, but I think he's a fine fourth outfielder. Dylan Moore, I think, is going to get a lot of playing time here, because I think he's going to probably be in against Southpaws quite a bit. And I feel relatively at ease about that. Dylan Moore's frustration for me is he's a guy. It's the jack of all trades, master of none, right? He can do a lot of things. Now that his speed is pretty much gone, he doesn't do any of them elite or anything close to elite. I'm not sure he does anything plus anymore. But he does have a good approach. He does have a history of hitting against lefties. He's a nice guy to have on the roster because he's not lost at second base. He's not lost at third base. He's not lost in the outfield. In fact, he might be better in the outfield than he is the infield now. He's not good. Same thing with Sam Haggerty. He's not a good defensive player. This is true about a lot of Seattle Mariners. It's a very different time. This is not your Jack Sorensic Seattle Mariners where you had elite defensive players all over the place of people who can't hit. There's just not a lot of that, especially in the outfield. Well, the infield's pretty bad too. Taylor Trammell, I'll never give up on you. And I'm encouraged by what I've seen this spring. Yeah, caveat, spring training, yada, yada, yada. I'm encouraged by what I've seen. The approach is so good. I wish he showed more assertiveness than aggressiveness. You know what I wish? I wish Taylor Trammell would take the Nolan Jones route. Not sure why I got Dylan Jones in my head. Nolan Jones was one of those guys who drew a ton of walks in the minor leagues, and walks are good. Walks are very good. But he also struck out a lot and didn't reach his hit tool and didn't really touch his power. Taylor Trammell has raw power. I want to see Taylor Trammell figure out some assertiveness. Because if he can, he belongs on a major league roster. And he's only 26. It seems like Taylor Trammell has been around forever. But there's still time. And I know the talent that I saw from him. I know the talent that I've seen. I know the results that I've seen in the minor league levels at times. I'm not giving up on you, Taylor Trammell. I still think you have a chance to be a thing. A starting thing, I'm not so sure. But a thing. Other guys that we could talk about, Brian Anderson is capable of playing in the outfield and the infield. I'm not sure he's going to make the team. There's nothing really for prospects outside of Jonathan Clase to talk about here for the outfield. Lazaro Montes is many years away. I love him to death, but a long way away. So this group, you've got an MVP candidate. You've got a player that when he's been healthy has been a well above average offensive player. You've got some young talent. You have Dominic Canzone, who has lit up the minor leagues. You have Luke Raley, who had a spectacular first half of the season and his really first chance of being a regular player. You've got some intriguing guys like Marlowe and Trammell. But I'm not sure how confident you should feel in this group. I don't think it's a disaster. I'm not sure it's good. And I'll tell you, one of the biggest concerns I have about the Mariners right now is that third base and left field offer massive question marks for you. That's 2/9 of your everyday lineup. I wish there was only one major hole. But there could be two major holes. And if Mitch Haniger gets hurt, and let's just be honest here, it's happened a lot. You're talking about a third of your lineup. And I just don't think the depth is good enough. I just don't believe the offensive depth of this team is good enough right now. Now, 1 through 9, are they better than last year if they're healthy? Yes. But that if is being stretched out forever. That is such a massive if. It's asking a lot. It's asking a lot. So, let's just ask you, how do you feel about this outfield? Is it good enough? It's a weird thing to say, is it good enough when you have Julio flipping Rodriguez patrolling center field? But the guys next to him have just as many questions as answers, if not more so. Please hit like, please hit subscribe. Appreciate everyone who's been tuning into this stuff. I'm going to have a bunch of preview videos coming up over the next few days. I was thinking about one a day, but since everything got on top of me, I'm just going to record like 20 of them in the next week and just release them. And you guys can watch them at your free will. So yeah, Mariner outfield. How you feeling?